Former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg wrote about the SignalGate scandal and said, well, they lied, obviously. They're not going to get out of this by playing semantics. Sending information about an upcoming military strike on unclassified channels and even to the wrong guy is wrong, reckless, and obviously a threat to American troops. So, which is it? Buttigieg asks. If this info wasn't classified, that in itself would be a scandalous screw up that must be explained. And if it was classified, then the Trump administration lied to Congress and to the American people. That's it. That's it, Mayor Pete, especially this line. They're not going to get out of this by playing semantics. By now, you've likely heard of what's being called SignalGate. Here's a summary from Axios. Top Trump administration officials used the messaging app Signal to debate highly classified and sensitive plans for bombing Yemen and accidentally included the editor in chief of The Atlantic in a group text in that encrypted chat. Y'all, they didn't just accidentally include someone who wasn't supposed to be in that group. They didn't just accidentally include a journalist. They included the editor in chief of one of the most prominent publications in the country, The Atlantic. Axios goes on to explain this incident has raised serious questions about whether the group chat violated laws, including the Espionage Act, and some Democratic lawmakers are calling for an investigation and potential repercussions against the officials involved. So, first of all, I hope all lawmakers are calling for an investigation. Democratic, Republican, conservative, progressive, everyone should be concerned. And they're darn sure better be repercussions, as Buttigieg said, for a scandalous screw up this big. There better be some serious repercussions. In any other environment, this would call for firings, resignations, demotions, you name it. But there's even more to this thing. Uh, Axios goes on to continue and says a government watchdog group sued Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and other Trump administration officials Tuesday, alleging they violated federal record retention laws. All these kind of communications, they have to be recorded. There has to be a record of them. And the use of Signal, a commercial messaging app, yes, it's end-to-end encrypted, and that's why people like it. But what it does is it circumvents creating official records, because if you have official records, those are then subject to Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests. And this whole thing circumvents that. What they're saying is, what they're alleging is it's probably illegal to do that. And this is where Buttigieg's comments about not letting them use semantics is so important, because already the PR spin has begun. And so Pete Hegseth said of Goldberg, the Atlantic editor in chief, he said, he's a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and again. So classic strategy of trying to mischaracterize and discredit the people, the accusers, the people who are sounding the alarm, in order to avoid the obvious wrongdoing there. And also, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, said in a Senate hearing there was no classified material that was shared in that Signal group. She's not the only one. John Ratcliffe, in that same hearing, he's the director of the CIA. He said, my communications in the Signal group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information. Okay, John. Trump himself said it wasn't classified information. But don't let them play semantics. The way I see it, this is a chink in the armor. This is a loose thread, so pull it. I'm not saying this debacle is everything, but it's something. It's really the first time that the ineptness, the dangerous ineptness of this administration has sustained the attention of the nation. I'm calling this video Vanishing Acts, SignalGate, Disappearances, and the Cost of Silence. So with SignalGate, keep up the noise, the congressional hearings, share it on social media, call and write in to officials. Don't let this moment get swept away in the flood of other news. Don't let them minimize this or lie to get themselves out of this. Don't let this moment vanish. Along those same lines of vanishing acts is vanishing people. You remember those 250 plus Venezuelans who were deported from the United States to El Salvador on suspicion, unproven, no due process of terrorist activity, gang activity. And already that's almost lost to our memories. But there was a journalist, and he wrote this chilling article in Time magazine called What the Venezuelans Deported to El Salvador Experienced. Journalist's name is Philip Holsinger, and he was in El Salvador when the planes landed, and he chronicled what happened from the moment the plane landed to the intake at this notorious detention facility in El Salvador. He said, almost all the detainees came to the door of the plane with angry, defiant faces. It was their faces that grabbed me because within a few hours, those faces would completely transform. I felt the detainees' fear as they marched through a gauntlet of black clad guards, guns raised like the spears of some terrible tribe. And the intake began with slaps. One young man sobbed when a guard pushed him to the floor. He said, "I'm not a gang member. I'm gay. I'm a barber." I believed him, but maybe it's only because he didn't look like what I had expected. He wasn't a tattooed monster. Inside the intake room, a sea of trustees descended on the men with electric shavers, stripping the heads of hair with haste. The guy who claimed to be a barber began to whimper, folding his hands in prayer as his hair fell. He was slapped. The man asked for his mother, then buried his face in his chained hands and cried as he was slapped again. Holding my camera, it was as if I watched them become ghosts. Already that headline seems dated, seems old, and the memory of this deportation is almost swept away in the deluge of other information. But for these men, the horror is just beginning. And that's not the only vanishing act of people disappearing. A Tufts University student was taken by masked ICE officials. That's the news headline for a Yahoo News article, and it says that Rumeysa Ozturk, who is a 30-year-old Turkish national and Fulbright scholar, she was walking across her campus, Tufts University in Somerville, Massachusetts. She's a PhD student there in the Child Study and Human Development Program. And this is on Tuesday, March 25th, when she was detained and arrested. Now, those are very concise words to describe an elaborate, terrifying incident. So, video came out after this incident. And what it showed was 6 plainclothes officers surrounding this woman. One of them grabbed her arms before another appeared to produce a badge and identify the group as federal agents. "We're the police," they can be heard saying. But then there's someone off camera, an onlooker, who says, "Yeah, you don't look like it. Why are you hiding your faces?" So imagine the scene. You're out walking, minding your own business, headed to your next whatever. 6 men in plain clothes and masks physically detain you, and not until after they detain you do they pull out a badge and say, "We're the police." And then they shuffle her into a waiting SUV. This was in Massachusetts. Now Ozturk is being detained in a prison in Louisiana, in a detention facility in Louisiana. And she's one of several people incarcerated for supposed terrorist related activities. You remember Mahmoud Khalil, he's a Palestinian activist detained outside of his apartment at Columbia University, supposedly for terrorist activities, which have not been proven. What we're witnessing is the normalization of state sponsored vanishing acts. People disappearing into systems of violence with no transparency, no due process, and no recourse. Right now, it's immigrants or those who hold so called wrong opinions about political issues, according to this regime. But make no mistake, it can be any one of us for any reason. The most horrifying part is we don't know what happens after people are disappeared, after these vanishing acts. That's the sadistic effectiveness of incarceration. Once you're behind bars, no one except the people there really know what's happening, and the victims are virtually powerless to stop it. And this is happening alongside outright lies about SignalGate and a host of other issues happening right now. The truth itself is vanishing. So, what can we do? Well, if we're honest, for everyday people, we can't do a whole lot directly. I mean, we're not the lawyers prosecuting the case, we're not the elected officials holding the hearings, but we can make noise. We can raise our voices to let it be known loud and clear that gross national security negligence and incompetence is not okay, that disappearing people is not okay, that this terrorist version of the United States is not okay. And so we refuse to forget and we continue to bear witness. We do not let them play semantics with human rights abuses, affronts against the very image of God in all people. We refuse to let fear, apathy, or ignorance close our eyes or silence our voices. These will not be vanishing acts. Not with our safety, not with our people, and not on our watch.